Before we get into you talking about the subject matter today, which is Tamare. Yeah, I just want just to let you know that it's such an honor. Like I I remember coming, on Tamare and you teaching and even the first time I ever came across you, I was just like, this brother, man, it's like the energy that you exude is just beautiful. And
Appreciate it.
yeah, I tend to find that people who are close to the master teacher, um, in whatever way, whether it's spiritual or physically being around him, they tend to have this yeah, this presence of peace and calm, and it comes across when you teach and everything. So, and then of course, Nuwbia Design, the creative aspect, people be seeing me, just for the listeners and for those watching, like that when they're saying you look fly when I'm wearing that Nubian Design stuff, this is the brother behind, the mastermind behind that. So I just wanted to, yeah, just show you some love and really happy
Appreciate it.
that you're here today to talk to me about, Tamare and whatever else you want to talk about. So yeah,
Okay.
just introduce yourself, however you want to introduce yourself, and then let's get into it.
Okay. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be on the platform. It's a very powerful platform and see it's reaching a lot of people. Um, I just like a simple introduction. My name is Imhotep. I've been a student teacher, the master teacher, Dr. Malachi York, since '88. I moved in the community in '91, and I've been rocking with the master teacher ever since. So I was blessed to live on Tamare for a large portion of the time from '93 up until it was taken from us. So I just want to share some of my experiences from that.
Tour. Yeah, I mean, there are people who have never ever met the master teacher, never been on Tamare, and so this is a really great opportunity for them to really get to hear and know about not just a master teacher from someone who's walked with him for so many years, but to experience Tamare, yeah, again from someone who lived it and was there. So yeah, just feel free to like start wherever you start at the beginning. the
Okay,
beginning the beginning is I'm sure pretty much a long time ago, but
okay.
please do.
Well, like I said, I moved up on Tamarack in '93, around April '93, and it's first I wanted to state, the freedom for our master teacher, our father, our friend, brother, confidant, um, Dr. Malachi York. This case was never about child molestation or racketeering or the RICO or
Sure.
anything. It was really just about stopping a very powerful and positive black man who was doing a lot to
Zamal, sorry, it's just because you're not very clear on the camera. It's very dark, and I want to make sure
okay.
that people can see you. So I'm not sure if you can adjust your lighting or um
Let me see. Give me one
yeah,
second.
no problem.
Um,
Yeah, that it was just so as you moved, it was perfect. Yeah.
if I
Um,
stand up,
yeah, I think it may be the it's like when you sit down, it just goes really black. Like I can literally
all right.
just
Let
see
me see. Right.
that's definitely better. Yeah, that's even it's gone again. I think when you go closer to the camera, um, yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Okay. Will that
that's
work?
that works. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make sure that
No
people
problem.
can see you properly. But go ahead.
Okay. Again, as I was saying, that this case was never about child molestation or
Tour.
racketeering or RICO or anything like that. It was really about derailing and trying to stop a very positive and powerful black man who was doing his part to raise a very powerful, intelligent, beautiful tribe worldwide, about black empowerment, and not just black empowerment, was empowerment for everyone because our organization is not restricted just to Black folks, but it was just to bring everybody together in a positive manner, to upraise the consciousness of people worldwide. And Dr. Malachi was doing just that. And I don't say that lightly. You know, child molestation in any form is very serious. And I personally have family members who've been through that. So I don't say that lightly or taking anyone's accusations kindly or just throwing it to the wind. But being lived up there for all that period of time and knowing some of these individuals and knowing the climate that was going on at that time, especially with the sheriff in Eaton, Georgia, Sheriff Howard Richard Seals, and what we were doing and the push we were making, not just in Eaton, but surrounding areas, Macon, Augusta, Athens, Georgia, and the things were building on. It made a lot of people very nervous and very afraid to see that amount of Black people coming together in harmony and unity. No fights, no violence, no drunkenness, no alcohol, and building for self and kind that a lot of our teachers have taught throughout the years. And then, so it was never about what they said it's about. So I always want to first start with the innocence and freedom for our master teacher, Baba Yananin, as we affectionately call him. He
Yeah,
said,
100%.
yes, indeed.
Mm.
Uh, and like I said, I moved up in '93. And at the time I moved up, was a few months after Dr. York had moved down. I should say moved down to Tama're. I was coming from Atlanta, Georgia at the time, in the community there. And one of the first misconceptions I wanted to say was that a lot of news outlets and a lot of bloggers and everybody who jumping on the hype try to slander us as Nuwaupians. They try to paint the this quote unquote Nuwaupian cult as there was a few hundred people who lived on this land, Tamare, secluded away from society. And, Dr. York has even said in trial that he was taking people to a secluded area to try to hide, to do all these nefarious objects, which was nothing to even closely remotely to what Tamare was.
Mm.
When I first moved up there, it was basically just open land. As it was purchased from the previous owner, it was a hunting facility, a hunting land where the guy had imported different animals for locals to come out and hunt. Of course, when we got there, we removed those fences and things because we didn't believe in hunting or killing animals for fun. And it was basically this open land. And it was just a small amount of us up there just trying to set the groundwork for bringing our tribe to a holy land, a place they could come to. All right. When we first came to Eaton, we knew coming from different parts of the country, a lot of people coming from up north, that it would make the locals uncomfortable. So we always were integrating ourselves into Eaton itself, which is the surrounding area. If you're not familiar, never been there, we actually didn't live in Eaton. We lived in Putnam County, which was outside the city or town limits of Eaton, Georgia. But that was the closest town to us, pretty much, about a 10-minute ride up the major highway. So if you're
Right.
coming from Atlanta to go to Eaton or these other different areas, you'd have to come through this highway and you pass us on that highway.
Right. Right.
Um, and so when we first got there, Dr. York and others, we set up. It was a radio store in town, a record shop, excuse me,
Mm.
York Records. We frequented the businesses in Eaton, whether it was the Chinese food spots, the banks, laundromats, the building supply companies, whatever we could do to try to make ourselves known to the people who were there. We helped out with the floats. They have an annual parade every year. We helped out with that. Dr. York was very integral, came in town, went to the community meetings, introduced himself to everyone. We would go to Pizza Hut all the time, hang out in there, introducing ourselves. We made ourselves very clear to the community that we came from up north. It's a tribal land. We're coming back, and we want to be a part of the community. It wasn't any cult thing where we were off on our own, doing our own thing. It was nothing like that. Dr. York had um, talent shows for all the local community, not just Eaton. All the local towns that were around were invited to come out to his talent show, win cash prizes. He had fishing events where he invited, because at the time before that, no black person that ever came out to that land. We had 3 lakes on the land, had been able to come out there and fish because of the racism in town and all the different previous owners. We invited people out there to come out and fish on our land free of charge. When we had our very first um, uh, Savior's Day event, which we had every June, the very first one, which was a cowboy themed one, being we were recognizing our cowboy and Native American heritage that year. We invited the local vendors in town, the local village in Millsville, to come out, be a part of our festivities free of charge. We were always doing anything we could to integrate ourselves into the broader community at large.
Right.
We never tried to stay apart. It wasn't this, again, this media portrayal that we was a cult over here doing our own thing. We were very much a part of the community and trying to help out as much as we could while also building our own land. Gradually, we started putting houses on the land, and we went through a whole lot of turmoil. We went to hundreds of planning and zoning meetings to try to make sure that everything we're doing was according to the regulations of the town. Literally hundreds of town hall meetings we were going to. Very few of them we were successful, but we continually kept going respectfully, trying to, again, make sure that everything was done by the books. All right.
Right.
From
Yeah,
there,
just before, because you've said some information that is pretty much probably new to a lot of people, and want to kind of like clarify and pick up on some of the points.
okay.
So you said that when you first arrived, there was a record, Dr. York had a record record store first, and that was in Eaton, or where was
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Around 90, I want to say late 93, early 94,
Yeah.
right around that time, Dr. York opened up a record store in town
Right.
called Records.
The
And
reason I'm saying that is when we start to look at the case, they claiming that, Dr. York was running from New York because, he was afraid of being indicted or something, so he ran to kind of go to Egerton and hide. But from what I'm picking up from you is that, and again, this doesn't make sense because Sheriff Sills, the sheriff, was saying that they had been actually monitoring him for a long time prior to him going to Egerton. So that obviously doesn't make sense if he was. I mean, the land wasn't built up at the time you arrived, right? So there wasn't a pylon, or what they tried to say was a gated community. And as you're saying, like, he was integrating himself into the community with these events like fishing and inviting people and doing all kind of charity work. So that's actually really really interesting, because I didn't even know about that part that you're saying in terms of the record store. So yeah, I
correct.
just wanted to pick up on that. Your lighting
Yeah,
is still a bit it goes in and out. I think if
okay.
if you could have a light, yeah, that's perfect for some reason. If you
That's
if you
perfect.
can keep it like that, that's great.
Okay.
It's
I was
cut
just
it's
like,
cutting off the
right
top
there.
of your head a little bit, but it's great. But yeah,
Okay.
so go ahead.
Yeah, so we first of all, you if you know anything about indictments, moving out of state is not going to stop an indictment. What I mean. It wasn't like Dr. York was an unknown figure. It wasn't like our move from Catskill Mountains to Eaton, Georgia, was a silent move. It was Dr. York had spoke about it. It happened. The purchase of the land was made through a regular land purchase. There was a bank account. There was a mortgage on the property.
Right.
So it wasn't a secretive move. And as soon as Dr. York got down there, from when I moved there, and like I said, he moved there a few months before I moved on to Tamare, um, he was always around. He was always. It was very. If there were so many people who could probably attest to the fact that they used to see Dr. York just walking around, and he loved the freeness of being in a southern town in his
Right.
older age, unable to move around like that in New York City, and then Catskills was so cold. He
Mm.
enjoyed just being able to get out, him, his wife, sometimes his best friend, just walking around the record shop, walking around Walmart. I remember the first time Pops came, was like, yo, I found this spot called Walmart. Like, yo, you couldn't believe it. Yo, so
Right.
he'd never heard of Walmart. It was something that simple. Or, so it was just a merging of coming down and enjoying what we hope to
Hmm.
be Southern hospitality as we're on our tribal land, building that up.
The other thing you said, before we get into, because when you started to mention about attending, to make sure that, before they got into the kind of like building violations and all that kind of accusation, you said that Dr. York was about building and bringing this positivity to not just Sabians, but to the world, and
Right.
doing such a beautiful thing. Why is that seen as a bad thing by those who opposed him? And if it's something that's positive for the community, for the whole world, for not just black people, what is it that, made, his well, adversaries feel that there was something, negative about that? That seemed like a very positive thing.
Well, it's not just Dr. York. If you look at the history of um, African American leadership here in America, it's something that's always been targeted. Um,
Right.
Back to slavery times, those who were free, who were trying to end slavery and eradicate that institution, go on from there after slavery. Every leader who was trying to wake African Americans, Black people, whatever you want to call us, up to the knowledge of self and doing for self and creating their own was always persecuted. Just a whole litany of individuals.
Mm.
All our towns that we started from Tulsa, Oklahoma, throughout all the other ones that don't get the same recognition as Black Wall Street, they were all burnt down and persecuted and tried to stop any organization of African Americans from coming together and doing for self. So when we as Nuwaupians were trying to do that in Eaton, Georgia, and those who are in power saw that growth that we were having, and not just physical growth and building, but the political growth that we were attaining as well.
Mm.
I'm gonna fast forward real quick because it's going to tie into a little bit what you asked.
Sure.
We had, as everyone pretty much knows, 476 acres in Eaton, Georgia, that we owned. All right. We also owned a um, lodge. Well, we were converting to a lodge in Athens, Georgia. We were attempts again to put a second floor on that for the lodge. We had a grand lodge we were building there, and we also were in the process of getting a clinic. All right, because we had one of our Shriners, um, may he rest in peace, brother Dr. Aljuma.
Yes.
He was working on the cure for sickle cell, and our Shriner organization was attempting to buy a um, clinic over
Medical.
there,
Right.
allow him to work there, as well as help the surrounding individuals. So our shrine was going to buy a clinic in Athens, Georgia, along with having our lodge in Athens, Georgia. And then we're still
Right.
going to buy a clinic. We're just going to do it in Africa now. But we were doing that in Athens, Georgia. In Macon, Georgia, we were attempting to buy al-Mahdi temple, and that's you'll see that on a lot of the back of the books. Also, we were buying a church for our Egyptian Church of Karas, which had a school attached to it for our Amun-Ra Institute. So Dr. York was creating a triad of cities. So when you visit, you just don't come to Tamare and Eatonton. You go to Macon to visit
Right.
the shrine and the church and the school, and you visit Athens. So you go to the lodge, or you go to the clinic. If and these were all building points. And there was a lot of plans we had for Eaton, Georgia. We had already had I think it was 400 by 400 silo. We were going to create an auditorium, which also had a skating rink on it. We had plans to blow out the lake to make a journey along the Nile where you can go from one side of the land to the
Right.
other side of the boat ride, and we would construct the temples along that route. We had a museum out there, cultural center. We were building um, different sites. So if you were a Christian, you can come to Tamare, visit, sit down. If you want to worship, go worship there. If you were Muslim, we had a mosque for you there. We were building sites for different religions because we were about unity. You follow? So
Right.
we're trying to create an environment where you can come out there, safe environment, peaceful environment. You learn. If you want to step off and pray to your God or your deity, we didn't mind that because we were like, we all family, regardless of what you
Right.
believe. We want you to come out here and feel safe as well. We had the
So
R&B
there was
singer.
major plans, really. I mean,
No,
for those
it
who
was
visited Tama're, they, you remember the deities along the path. Obviously, when you're coming through the pylon, you had the different sites, which if you can remember all of them, the communication with the deity site, you had obviously you had the Ma'at at the top, you had the pyramids, the shopping mall, even the train for the
the
kids, for the
same gym,
children.
correct?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. So already that was even just that aspect of Tamare was already drawing a lot of attention in terms of a tourist
yeah.
attraction.
I
But all
mean,
these other things you're also mentioning, wow, that
what we
was
had on Tamaray, what people saw was maybe less than a quarter of what we would have had if they hadn't stopped us then. Not even talking about the 22 years since then, but would have.
right,
But at the time, what people saw was only a quarter of what we were trying to do and the scale in which we were trying to go.
right,
You know, what they feared is something like this because one as I spoke about earlier, that the different vendors would come out in our first Savers days. We were getting letters from Coca-Cola for a sponsorship. Howard Johnson had sent a letter. This is a potential place to put a hotel because they saw not just Tamaray, but also the Lake Oconee area and that tourist attraction that could have been out there. So Dr. York though would think, okay, they sent us a letter for a hotel. What does that tell you all?
mm,
You need to get Howard Johnson here. No, you don't put Howard Johnson out here. You build your own hotel.
right,
It's like that. Like we were seeing the potential, and what they feared was we could have got a certain amount of land and annexed from Eaton. They had create our own town. They just
mm,
did it near me, where a town, Lithonia, and uh, a little part broke off, and they
right,
called it Stone Mountain. That's what you can do if you acquire a certain amount of land. And they feared us doing that, because then we would have created our own community on our own tribal land. We would have our own regulations, things like that. And they didn't want that opposition. Again, whenever you see black people trying to build their own, and Dr. York was always talking about building your own, controlling your own destiny. We used to have
right.
conversations like, okay, who's going to make the toilet paper? You know what I mean? Who's
Yeah.
going to, those things that we usually don't think about until like COVID hit and the toilet paper got scarce and somebody said, I should invest in some toilet paper. But
Mm,
the master was having us think like that. You know what I mean? Who's going to put this? Who's going to have your socks built? Who's going to be the company to get the water from the ground and build the wells? We need to start doing these different things so we control in all points of our destiny. And that's what we were working on. And again, they feared that. And if you look at
mm,
some of they're still floating around. Some of the later publications we put out, whether it was our Shrine organization, whether it was our daily news, we had a little newspaper out there, and you'll see Dr. York with prominent members of the community in Athens, Georgia. He's with the um, uh, Department of, I think it was the Secretary of Labor in Georgia, was
right.
there. The police chief in Athens, Georgia, the sheriff in Athens, Georgia. You'll see.
Yeah, I remember he was voted one of like the top influential
Correct.
personalities in Georgia at one point, which was also in the publications. But you touched on a very, very pertinent point, which was about the fear of the political power that we as Nuwaupians would have had if we had more land and more citizens, if you can use that term. And I also know before we get into all like the so-called building violations and sheriff seals and all that stuff, um, Reynolds Plantation were also a factor, isn't it? Because they were afraid that this would kind of disrupt what they had in terms of their plans for the future. Because
Correct.
obviously Dr. York was creating like I guess you could call it a competitive um competition to Disney World as well, because that was, just down the road. So I want you to touch on that a little bit if you can.
Yes. What happens is Eaton, Georgia, like a lot of small towns in Georgia, is controlled by old money, and that old money goes back for sometimes hundreds of years, and they have a tight grip on their community, not just the blacks in the community, but the whites as well. Sometimes it's run by older families. You mentioned one, the Reynolds plantation,
Yeah.
um, and you also have very close to where we were at. They were also building up what's called Lake Oconee, and they were making a push to build that up as well. So we were like a competing entity for that, and they didn't want to have that competing entity for what they were building out there as well. Uh,
Right.
so that was definitely, and also, you know, quite frankly, people aren't comfortable with black people becoming aware of who or what they are and the powers that they have, and especially if no one has ever lived in a small town, a rural small town, especially in the South, deep South, you'll see the mentality that these people have against black people, and they still want us to be subservient. And as
Right.
much as we try to integrate into them, integrate and help out, we weren't subservient. It just, we just weren't going to have it. If you told us no at at a board meeting, we want to know why you told us no. We want to go into the law books and see what was your legal reason for telling us no. We want to cover that, and if you say it, we got to fix it. We're gonna come back the next week and we're gonna be on it. And we were that type of people. Like we didn't believe in taking no for an answer if it was not a legitimate. And most of the responses they gave to us weren't legitimate. It was out of
Right.
fear and out of jealousy and out of us controlling our own destiny. And we should see it all the time with people in Eatonton, who couldn't believe our audacity, as they said, to do the things we were trying to do.
But
Um,
given the history of the Deep South with, the whole civil rights movement and things like that, why there? Why Eton? Why Deep South, where we have the history of these people, as you say, looking at us as subservient to them and just like not going to be very embracing and welcoming? Why Eton? Why that spot of all the places we could have gone to?
for one, we own it all, so we can go wherever we want.
Tour.
We don't need an excuse or a reason to go anywhere we want to go. Um, Two, it's our tribal land. Our ancestors occupied that land. You follow?
Right.
So it was us reclaiming our tribal land, and that was actually, to jump forward a little bit, that was actually the quote unquote beef that started it all with Sheriff Seals. Tamare, where the entrance off the highway, there was actually three entrances to the land. There was a far one that we created and gated. It was a back road. There was another one that was further up the road. Actually, if you're coming from Atlanta, there was another one that people
So
never.
so when you're coming from Atlanta on Shady Dale Road?
Correct. If you come from
Right,
Atlanta on Shady Dale Road, before you got to the power line, there was another entrance that
right.
most people didn't even know existed because it was
Hmm.
hidden back there. All right.
Mm.
Then as you pass by it, you get to the power line. All right, which was not a gated entrance, as everybody like to say, it was gated community. There was no gate on the power line. You could ride right through it if you wanted to.
That's right.
It was someone there, security, to stop you or to question who you were, but it was not a gated community whatsoever. It was wide open. It was just a large power line Egyptian structure. So,
Right.
but what happened is that when we went to building and zoning to with our plans of what we were going to do, um, Sheriff Seals has stated that he wanted a public access road onto the property. If we're going to build all these structures and living homes, that the road should be public, which is normally what happens um, if you build community,
Yeah.
right? You would have public access roads. But as we explained many times, it was not a public community. It was a family. We had a large family
Right.
tribe. You follow? So we did not agree with having a public access road, which would have given anyone just the ability to just come up on our land. It was like, nah. And that was the original beef that started it all.
Right.
but he wanted access to our land. Now, prior to him, I want to make a point real quick.
Sure.
Prior to him, it was a sheriff named Eugene Russo. He wound up going to jail for doing some wrongdoing. But again, to speak about this, us being on the run, or Dr. York hiding from an indictment, and us being secluded, there was an incident where a mother of someone, a sister who lived on the land, who was estranged, went to the sheriff and asked, like, yo, I can't find my daughter. First thing the sheriff, Eugene Russo, sheriff does, this is around 94, 95.
Right.
Comes up to Tamare, which we didn't call it Tamare at the time, comes up to Tamare with his deputies, with his mother. First thing Dr. York does on the radio, who's that? Boom, boom. Tell him to come on down. Dr. York invited the sheriff, the mother, the deputies, and allowed them to go in any structure they wanted to go to on Tamare. Nothing to hide. They went in his house, walked around. Sheriff, hey, it's your daughter? Yeah, they reunited, went out. Her, the husband, the mother, sister, went out to eat. Sheriff like, yo, ain't nothing out here. Another incident, right? 96, right before the 96 Olympics, when they were investigating any organization who they felt might be a threat. The FBI came to Tamare unannounced to check on us as an organization and to speak to Dr. York. Dr. York willingly went to the FBI headquarters in Atlanta, did a one of the lie detector tests.
Right.
The first one came back inconclusive. He went back the next day with his attorney, Leroy Johnson, the late Leroy Johnson, did another one willingly.
Right.
So if there was an investigation into him or indictment that he was running from,
great
why would
point.
he allow these law enforcement people into his house, onto our land? Why would he go with the FBI, willingly take tests, introduce himself? Hey, if y'all gonna need anything, contact me. It was tapes where he would, if y'all wu-nuwaupians doing anything wrong, I know the FBI. I'll personally go tell on you because you're not going to destroy this organization. There were always signs that Dr. York never was trying to run from anything.
Right.
Our land was always open. You follow? People were always allowed on it. We had nothing to hide because everything we was doing was above ground. We weren't doing anything illegal. And these were just different instances I'm explaining to show that people forget about. And they later on say, well, y'all was, out there hiding. Wasn't nothing to hide from. You
Right.
don't build pyramids to hide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't make yourself you don't write a book, Man for Planet Risk, to hide.
Right.
So we definitely weren't hiding from anything, especially Dr. York. All right.
Okay. Yeah. So it was, even though the Deep South had this history of, the slavery and the good old boy network and,
Right.
like not really liking quote unquote black people to be progressive, Dr. York didn't really find any of that, like a hindrance. He just wanted to be who he is and get along with everybody and didn't really take on the racism in that way, like a hindrance to do what he wanted us to do. Yeah. All right. So yeah, go ahead. I want you to be, that's anything you want to talk about. So how did we get into yeah, you said the initial issue was about having a public road or public
Correct.
access to the land, which doesn't
That
make
was
sense because
that
it's
was
private
initial.
land, right?
Correct.
So yeah, that didn't seem like an unreasonable thing for you to object to. So what
That
happened
was the
from there?
initial issue
Yeah.
when Sheriff Howard Richard Seals came into office. Prior to him, the sheriff, Eugene Russo, the one I told you that came out,
Yeah.
really didn't play a part in anything. He was a sheriff doing his own dirt. He didn't really mess with us at all. All right. We ran a few things with the deputies. Is any, you come to a small town, they're gonna start questioning you. That's without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah.
Because you're just an unfamiliar face. But we didn't really have any problems with that particular sheriff. Our main problems was with building and zoning at the time, which would continually deny our requests. And one of the reasons why we were trying to acquire more land to annex and create our own community, because they were consistently basing their decisions on our building as if we were in the town of Eatonton. For example,
Right.
we wanted to create a museum they said we don't have that on our zoning record, in our zoning book. You follow? When they would do, we would, you do traffic tests and things like that about how much traffic is going to come onto the land, and you have to do, fields, land, not fields, they do the land sampling and all the different things you would do to build a community. They would use the guidelines for Eaton, Georgia, for us out in the country, which didn't make
So
it
can you just explain for obviously people in the UK and other listeners, like when you say Eaton, so Putnam County is separate from Eaton.
correct? Yes,
So
Putnam County
right,
was Eaton was within Putnam County, but Eaton was very small. Putnam County is rather large. There's a lot of counties here in Georgia, but Putnam County was kind of large compared to Eaton itself, just the city limits, town limits.
right.
Town limits.
So when
So
you go to get these permits, you're going to Eaton or to Putnam
correct. We would
County?
go to Eaton to get the permits, and we would have to go before the building zoning board, things like that. But they would continually deny us based on the building and zoning requirements for the town.
Right.
So they would tell us, revise this, revise that, change this, change that. They would work with us to a small degree, but then when we keep coming back, it would be more and more problems, more and more problems. There was also a problem with us wanting, there's a lot of, it was a big prefabricated homes company, Horton Homes, which is getting that old money in Eaton, Georgia. We didn't want to get our homes from Horton Home. We got a better deal. And they said at one of the board meetings, Horton, who was, I don't believe he's selling the board, but it was close ties to it, they want to deny everything simply because they're looking at it, okay, if they get 100 homes, I can't get a piece of that. I'm allow you to get a permit. It was things like that. Like I said, again, dealing with old money.
Right. And one of the things they use when they try to come at us negatively is that, oh, there were no houses on the land, it's just a few trailers and stuff like that. But of course, the trailers were just temporary until the houses could be built. Correct? Right.
Correct. And
And
to
without
address that,
the permits for the zoning permits, you can't build the houses. So it's
correct.
almost like, yeah, okay, go ahead.
And I want to address that for a quick minute, because a lot of our building was held back for years. So that, for one, there's this misconception, again, through the media, people don't know. Like Tamare was, there's hundreds of people there. Usually on Tamare, it was no more than 60, 70 male and female adults up there. It was a very, very small community, especially when compared to our worldwide body of, members.
Right.
Like they try to confine Nuwaupians to Tama're. And like I said, it was 60 or 70 of us at the most. Sometimes when I moved on Tamare, it was about 20 of us there. So the housing, because of the issue with the housing and not getting approved over and over and over again, it kept the numbers very small. Now, the one thing about Tamare, unequivocally, 100%, the easiest thing to do on Tamare was to leave. Nobody kept you from leaving Tamare. If you decided to move up there, you already knew what you were moving into. You already knew it's going to be certain struggles, because we were trying to build a nation here. We trying to build this tribe up. There were certain things that I'll speak for myself, certain things that I gave up, certain comforts, because the children were safe. And I saw the future.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when you were moving on Tamare, if you moved up there, all right, if you didn't like it, you just simply left. There was nobody to report to. There was nobody to ask for permission from. There was nobody stopping you. There was no guards. It was anything. If you didn't like your experience, and some people didn't. Some people left and said, I'm going to open up a bookstore here. Some people left. They still around. Hey, I loved it, but I couldn't troop it on Tamare. Fine. You know what I mean? There's brothers that I know that I never had a beef with if you decide to leave, which again was the easiest thing in the world to do. There was nobody forcing anybody to stay on Tamare unless you were a minor and your parents were there. Because there are stories about children running away if a child runs away and they're underage, you have to bring them back to their parents. They didn't run away from abuse out New York. Sometimes
Mm.
children get frustrated. You follow what I mean? But
Right.
it happens very few. But I want to make that point because
It's a very important point because when they try to paint this picture of, oh, there were children and people held against their will and they couldn't leave. And my experience with Tamare, like you say, there was never a gate. There was obviously security just to make sure that people weren't coming in with anything that's going to harm anybody. But you're right. I mean, so they paint this picture to try and tie it into other communities, predominantly Christian communities like David Koresh and all he does Heaven's Gate and these other communities that they want to
right,
say they got together to commit suicide, and this is what they try to say, that the dangers of people in Tamare coming together in the gated community to quote unquote
yeah.
commit suicide.
I
So it's
mean, because
very
one
important
minute
what you're
they
saying.
say we want to commit suicide, the next minute they say we're hoarding guns for
Yeah.
war. I mean, it doesn't make sense. None of the stuff made sense. It doesn't make sense today. Uh,
Mm,
but with any organization, you have people who don't like it, people who
mm,
get disgruntled, people who find a new calling in life.
mm,
And as I always tell people, anybody who ever asks me, should they leave or not? I say yes. Follow your heart's desire. What do we want someone around who doesn't like it?
mm,
If you want to go back or start going to church, hey, go to church. My relatives go to church. You follow me? If that's what
mm.
you want to do, if you want to go back and join Islam, please do. That might be what your soul desires or needs at this moment. You
Right,
want to do
right.
anything else, go do that. It was never an issue of anyone trying to go follow their heart's desires if that didn't include living on Tamarack. Some people just weren't built for it.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It was work. It was a lot of work. But if you like the work, if you like the protection of your children, if you like to try to build your own farming system, if you like, things like that excited me.
mm.
In the future, to create an environment where my children can grow up learning their own language, learning their own culture, not being spoiled by all these, things that you see going
Mm,
on now. You
right.
know what I mean? So it was something again where it was voluntary, and a lot of people who wanted to move on Tamarack, when they asked the brothers, no, no, it was never Dr. York decision only. If you could move up on Tamarack or not, he would consistently, hey, I ain't gonna live with you. Ask them guys over there, you know,
Mm,
and will confer with us. I can't speak for the sisters and how they moved up there. But again, it was a very small community. The vast majority of the work that was done in building Tamarack was done by volunteers, brothers and sisters who came. Some would spend their vacations to come to Tamarack and help out working. Some who moved close in Eatonton and surrounding communities, and they would come and spend their time. They get off work, come help out. Some retired. They would be up
mm.
there more frequently helping out. Sometimes people would just come. They didn't want to help out. They just want to enjoy it. So they would come,
Yeah. I
eat
remember
the hamper, and
before
they
before I moved to Eaton, I remember like every Savior's Day, we used to, the brothers from the UK, we would come up there and help and
I
work
can't
and
beat.
build. And yeah, and we would stay in Milledgeville and all the surrounding areas. And it's interesting you're saying about the fear of the economy, because we actually brought a lot of money to that area, because when we came, we would hire hotels, hire cars, we'd be going out to eat, we go to Ingles and go to
Yeah.
like Captain D's and all the places in Milledgeville.
uh,
So we would be coming with a lot of, UK pounds, and they were worth a lot back then. And that's just the UK. But on Tamare, you saw people from, like you say, all walks of life, all races, from different places, because you meet people with different accents on the land, and
definitely.
people be coming from, like you say, everywhere. So to paint a picture of Nuwaupians just being on the land, like that's where all the Nuwaupians was forced, because we know that every Savior's Day more and more people were coming, and we would meet people and make friends with people from all parts of the
All over.
world. Yeah.
Yeah, with people coming from all over the world, again, assisting, helping out, enjoying themselves, and as well as Tamare, we used to every day from usually around maybe 9, 10 o'clock. So now we'd all walk together, or people be walking, exercising. Uh, After that, until usually when the sun appeared to set, nighttime, Tamarack was open. People would constantly come by. Hey, what's this? Hey, go ahead and take a look for yourself. Can I get out? Yeah, just don't go over there to the houses. Don't go to the park where the children at. Go ahead, walk around.
Mm.
Talk to anybody. We were consistently allowing people to come into Tamarack to visit, to talk with us, get to know who we are, look around, take pictures. If you want to come back, bring your family, come back, bring your family.
Mm.
That's not the sign of a cult that's hiding these deep secrets.
Mm.
That's not a sign of someone who's afraid of scrutiny. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We had classes every weekend, whether it was in the temple or outside when the weather was warm. You would see the children out playing.
Yeah, by the
See
beach
Dr. York
area.
would come
Yeah.
through oftentimes Doc would pop up, teach class, take pictures with people. And these are people he didn't know. You follow that he just willingly, hey, let me get to know you.
Mm.
Family members would come up. My family came up, others' families came up to visit. So again, I'm trying to drive that point that
Right.
Tamarack was not a closed cult land. It was a land, our tribal land that we invited people up and we sought to build up for our own tribal purposes to be and individuals who took care of self and kind in a
Mm.
peaceful environment. Because in
I mean,
all
there's so
yeah,
much we can talk about,
yeah,
but yeah, let's get into, like you say, the build up from the building violations and going back and forth with the sheriff, to some of the great moments, because you had, as you said, many people out Sharpton and many people, the
yes.
music industry, a lot of people came on the land. And then let's get into, this kind of false narrative that is being pushed about Tamare and of course about our master teacher.
Okay. Um, like I was saying earlier about all the different works we were creating, and it was a gradual um, building, and we were being taught how to do it ourselves. All right. Many of the
Mm.
later structures, Doc would come to us and say, "What do y'all think about this? Draw this up, design this." So a lot of structures later we were designing ourselves. Um, of course, Dr. York always has input, you know, into what we were doing, because he was so concerned with, the land and building an environment that would be conducive for families and things like that. Um, and again, they saw that growth we had, as well as especially the political growth that we had. We started inviting, Jesse Jackson who came out there, Al Sharpton who came out, the mayor of Macon. You see him with a fez on. The mayor in Albany, Georgia, gave us a proclamation, Nuwaupian Day. Um, the leader of at the time, the head of Gabio, which is the Georgia Black elected officials, their organization, Tyrone Brooks, Representative Tyrone Brooks, he was coming out there, hanging out on the land. Um, Abel Mabel, she was another one of the politicians from Atlanta who would come out there and politic with us. So we were starting to gain a lot of political contacts. Uh, and one of the things that they feared is that black vote. And
Mm.
more of us who were moving to Eatonton, I say, because they said we can't move to on the land town, we'll move to Eatonton itself until we can move up there and help
Right.
out. And they saw that the growth we had, the growth we were attaining. You had Wesley Snipes, who was attempted to buy right next door to Tamare. It was about 150-acre plot of land. Our next door neighbors, and they were selling it, and Wesley Snipes was attempted to buy it. He was going to put on Amin Ra security training school
Mm.
right next to our land.
Yeah, I
And
remember that. And they tried to
yeah,
tie him to us saying that, tie into what you said about the false allegations of building weapons and that, you know, that's
Exactly.
what that was all about. And then not long after that, Wesley started having troubles with tax
IRS,
evasion and all that kind of
excavated.
stuff. Yeah.
Correct. And
Mm.
he didn't buy it, to my knowledge. I don't have the inner workings of it, but they denied the permits for it. You know, he wanted to obtain the permits for the facility before purchasing the land because there'd be no reason to purchase land if you couldn't
Right.
build what you wanted. And that was denied. So it was so many things that they were denying in Eatonton. And then we started shining a light on it, shining a light on the local attorney, the town attorney, building zoning. You had a building inspector who didn't know anything about building. There was no qualifications to become a
Mm.
building inspector until we got in and made a fuss about it.
Right.
And they later changed that. You had Sheriff Seals coming out there in his capacity as a code building inspector, you know, checking the buildings out and things like that.
Yeah,
He
and he's
came
a
out,
sheriff, not a
yeah,
building
he's a sheriff.
inspector.
Didn't know nothing about building.
Right.
So it was a lot of things they were trying to stop,
Mm.
and that was our major battle until the raid happened.
As far as you talking about building, although people tried to trivialize the pyramids, right? The Black Pyramid, the Mir, that was a very significant building. And even though in comparison to the ones in Giza that our ancestors built before, it's
Right.
still not a very easy thing to build pyramids, right? Because you said
Oh,
Dr. York would, you know, kind of say, yeah, what do you want? Design it, build it. So how were
right.
the pyramids built? Because it's not an easy thing to do.
It's a mystery. I'll tell
Right.
you, when the architects and engineers came in to sign off on the Black Pyramid, they were amazed at the level of carpentry um, that had built the Black Mirror. And
Right.
it was supposed to actually be another one, a third one, which was bigger than the Black Mirror. But we didn't get a chance to build that one. We had cleared out the site for it for the third
Yeah,
pyramid.
I see. I saw that. Yeah.
All right. And for anyone who trivializes, because I've heard it before, like, any attempt to try to compare what we did to what our ancestors did in Egypt, you sound stupid with even trying to compare it.
Mm.
You follow? But we would say is bring the likeness of what you've built. You follow? If you've been studying Egypt for all these years, and as we progress in our information and our doctrine, and as Dr. York always taught, start living what you're speaking, and we
Mm.
start building a replica of Egypt. Okay, what if all these other people who study Egypt, what have you built?
Mm.
Don't compare it to ancient Tamare or Kemet. I mean, what have you built here in America with your hands?
Mm.
You follow what I mean? So
Tour.
these were when I'm personal. I like to kind of personalize it. When I started carving structures on Tama're, I didn't compare the bird I did that was a replica of Edfu to Edfu. I knew
Mm.
my ancestors and what they created. But the
Right.
fact is, I had never created anything of that magnitude. And it was a progression. You follow? So Dr. York was bringing talents out of us that we didn't know we had. When the brothers, particularly it was a brother named Proudfoot, who is the head engineer for the Black Mirror, when he went on about building it, we didn't have any idea, and he didn't have any idea how he was going to get this done. This complex pyramid, to create
Mm.
a pyramid without an internal structure, even by wood itself. Because originally it was supposed to be glass, but we had a person who did glass work, but the amount of insurance to have it in glass and have people in it was astronomical. So we changed it from glass to the wood with the stone outside. All
Right.
right. But when he did it, it was a genius in architectural or engineering. He had never done anything like that before, but we made it happen. You follow? So we looked at it from going from zero and how far we went in building, not comparing it to ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet or ancient Kush and what they built, which would be asinine to try to do. You follow?
Mm.
We built what we were able to build here in America, starting from scratch. Which, if you look at it from the point where we started studying ancient Egypt, and we named the land Tamare until what we built, it was wonderful, and people
Mm.
loved it. You
Right.
follow, and I'll tell you a story because originally, after we had built the temple, Imhotep's temple, which at the time wasn't called Imhotep's temple yet, It was just a replica of Solomon's temple. And Dr. York had invited, in the office, builders, same ones who built Egypt and Disney World, to Tama're. And Pops was telling us, like, y'all can't, we need somebody, some real builders come out here and do this. And of course, we was butthurt over it. Like, man, we got these guys walking around Tama're, and they got their blueprints and they talking, and they came back with a figure. Like, we see them walking around taking pictures and stuff, and they came back with a figure and a blueprint. It was something like 5 million, something like that. They wanted to do it. It was just a one long strip with structures on both sides, and we had Pops. We all had a meeting with Pops, impromptu meeting actually, and all the brothers are there, and Pops showing us, and we all, man, like, these guys are gonna do this. And Pop looked at us. He was like, "Y'all think y'all can do it?" We all emphatically, yes. We never built nothing. I didn't know nothing about building Egyptian structure whatsoever, and we went to work. You know, us, a group of builders who was used to building houses, and we built certain structures, but nothing of that magnitude, which we were doing. And looking at it from that angle, I'm very proud of the efforts the brothers and sisters put in to making that happen. It was an all-around group effort to make something like that happen. Again, so to compare it to what they did in Egypt was ridiculous. But it was still us tapping into our ancestors and what they did and what they made happen. And it was a signal to our younger generations, like, look, if you put the work in and utilize the power of your ancestors, that's the first time when Dr. York, they start introducing to us, calling your ancestors, when we start building Tamare. And if you tap into that force, it's nothing that can stop you. You know what I mean? Like, Dr. York used to do a lot of things as an inspiration for the younger generation to take it and do bigger,
better things. Yeah.
Like, let's not rest on what we did here building Tamare. Yo, go build a stone. You know what I mean? Get your children to architect school and engineering school so they had the trades and the ability, and then bring what your ancestors did up to modern times.
Right.
That that DNA explosion to build these things. So it was a spark. Like, Tamare was a spark. It wasn't meant. That wasn't the final destination of what we had Tamare to be. I mean, it was so much more.
It was beautiful, beautiful. I
Right.
mean, anyone who ever went on Tamare would, attest to that. It was amazing. But right, so how did we go? I mean, obviously, some permits were awarded or given because a lot of building did take place. And then how did we get into the troubles? Yeah, to take it to where we are today, as you say, 20 years down the line with a master being incarcerated from such a great beginning of a vision of, like bringing that peace, harmony, the building of Tamare, and just giving people that motivation to be able to do anything they want to do, Yeah.
Correct. Well, the skip, I don't want, because I could be here all day giving every little detail.
Yeah.
What we were going through again was a lot of frustration dealing with the Eaton, town of Eaton. We were getting certain things passed, and like I said, what you see on Tamare was about 25% of what we tried to put in. Matter of fact, less than 25% of what we were trying to do on Tamare. And as we progressed, Dr. York could actually move to Athens, and the land was deeded to 7 individuals who had been within the community for years. So Dr. York no longer owned the land. He literally moved to Athens, Georgia, had a house in Athens, Georgia, where he was working from. And he would visit sometimes, but it was at certain points. Sometimes we didn't see Doc for weeks or even months. He would be gone from Tamare. And what happened is you had disgruntled members who eventually left and helped destroy us from the outside, because there was nothing on the inside that they could do to from nothing from the outside that could affect us, because everything we were doing was legitimate. All right.
Right.
There were certain things, points I wanted to make. If you go back, and it's important to go back, start looking, and certain individuals are starting posting things online. If you go back to a lot of the original conversations when the raid happened, all right, one thing Sheriff Howard Richard Seals had said was that almost 2 years prior to the raid, he had what he thought was credible information from ex-members that molestation was happening on the land. All right. Now, a key point is if any individual, especially someone in law enforcement, has credible information, or even if it's a small bit of information that there is molestation going on in any home in America, any school in America, any church in America, the easiest thing they can do is report that to DFACS or DIFAS, the Department of Family and Human Services. And DFACS has the power to go to any home in America without a warrant, knock on that door and say, I need to talk to that child and investigate this credible information about abuse. That's it. If you see a whip on a child, if a child cries, anything, whether it's medical personnel, school personnel, religious personnel, especially law enforcement personnel, can go right to DFACS and report a belief that there is abuse going on in any home. Now, for 2 years, Sheriff Richard Seals sat on this information doing a quote-unquote investigation. That means for 2 years, you allowed children, according to you, to be in the way of a quote-unquote
danger.
Terms, a person you said was running guns, a person you said was creating a doomsday cult, a person you was going back and forth with in the media. You was coming out there religiously to check on the buildings as you were a quote-unquote building inspector. You were doing all this, yet and still you wouldn't report what could have shut Tamare down 2 years prior to the raid. And DFACS did not come to the raid into the land until the day of the raid. You follow? So you all.
So where's the priorities? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There.
So it was never about any children getting molested. You follow? And like I said earlier, I don't take molestation serious. I mean, I don't take molestation jokingly, but it was never any molestation on that land that occurred. It was never any word of that. It was never any inclination on it. The only one who we've heard about it through rumor was Nicole Lopez, who was in the trial. But I don't want to go into that too far into that because still doing some other things. But there was never any talk of molestation whatsoever on Tama're. You follow what I mean? What happened was, again, disgruntled people were on the outside. And I want to make another point because it came up in a few of the court cases. And every black organization, every single one you could think of, there was always informants in that organization. In our organization, there were informants who lived on Tama're. But you don't see any eyewitness or any information from any informants who lived on the land about molestation or anything illegal happening on the land.
That's interesting. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it would have been very simple. And that, you see that throughout multiple organizations about infiltration from government officials onto organizations, black organizations, because COINTELPRO did not die with J. Edgar Hoover. You'll never see anything from anyone who lived on Tama're in that manner. And they were upstate, they were in Brooklyn, they were all over, about Dr. York doing anything illegal to anyone. Again, they had to wait for disgruntled ex-members to come out and help build a case against Dr. York. It was never that any of that information. So while we were trying to build and build and build and build, like I said, Dr. York had moved to Athens, Georgia. You follow? When they arrested him in Millersville, Georgia, he had came to Tamare to visit. Like his house in Athens also got raided. You follow? But he was in town visiting and they got him there.
So that 2 years that Sheriff Seals apparently was doing an investigation where somebody had apparently come to him to mention this child molestation thing. What evidence did he actually produce from that investigation when it went to trial, if any at all? Exactly.
To this day, there's no evidence whatsoever of child molestation by anybody in Tamare, especially Dr. York. There's no DNA evidence. There's no video evidence. There's no photo evidence. In actuality, Dr. York won the child molestation case, which was in family court. You follow? He won that. And then after that, because a lot of people talk about this so-called confessional that Dr. York did, a plea deal. If you think about it, and I need people to think for a minute.
Yeah, the plea deal was something that, if you can bring some clarity to, because people always talk about the plea,
right? You have an individual which you say is the worst pedophile in history. You say is hoarding guns. You say has a cult on the land. You have countless witnesses, as you say, that you're going to produce to convict this man. You have DNA evidence, you say. You say you have video evidence. You say you have an unlosable case against this man to put him away forever. Yet and still, you offer him a 12-year plea deal, which he would have got out in 8 years.
Makes no sense.
Makes no sense whatsoever, which is why the state case was docketed and the feds picked it up, because Dr. York had already won the family case, which is sealed, even the children who were involved in it. When you have a family case for minors, even if the minor becomes an adult, they can't go get that information. That is sealed. Those were the children who were taken that day to DFACS. Dr. York won that case, which is why it never gets brought up what happened to those children in that case. Then it proceeded to the state. The state.
But sorry, even then, they say they call them children, but they were like, I mean, what is considered a child in terms of the age?
Well, there were 5 individuals who were taken that day of the raid who were underage. During the federal trial, the vast majority of them were above age.
Right.
And then out of the alleged victims, I believe 9 of them never were even contacted by the prosecution. They were just thrown in an indictment to make it fact.
Right.
But they offered Dr. York a plea deal, which made no sense whatsoever if you look at it from that context. You follow? And again, that's when the feds picked it up after that. And they had the indictment, then they had the, what do you call it, superseding indictment,
yes,
which contained information in it, which basically said that all of us were under a spell of Dr. York. So when we got in court, they utilized that, well, you can't believe these adults because they're under this spell, which nullified our testimony.
Another thing, a very important point, people, when they talk about the case, when it got to federal, they still bring the things that were prior to it going to federal that had already been dropped or weren't a part of the federal case.
Correct.
Do you see what I'm saying? So people think that a lot of the charges that he already, as you said, defeated or beat were part of the federal case when they were not. You
Correct.
see?
It was not a part of the federal case whatsoever. They convicted Dr. York of the Mann Act. And if you know anything about the Mann Act, which was originally created to bring prosecutes across state line, which would make it federal, that's what they utilized for Jack Johnson, the heavyweight champion, the Mann Act. The Mann Act is for the purpose of sex, unlawful sex, crossing state lines for the purpose of unlawful sex. And I'll give you an example. If an individual was in Georgia, and they met someone online in Alabama, the next state over, and went to Alabama, picked up this individual and brought him across state lines to Georgia. Even if they said they kind of changed their heart and said, you know what, I don't want to do this, and brought him back home, they would still get charged with the Mann Act, because the purpose of moving that individual from one state to the next state, the purpose is the violation of the Mann Act, not the act itself. So even if you did something when you moved them, that would be a state act.
Right.
But the actual transportation and the purpose of it will be a violation of the Mann Act. So what they did was, in the superseding indictment, they said that the purpose for Dr. York purchasing Tamare was to take individuals from New York to Tamare for the purpose of illicit sex. That was why the whole land was purchased. So then that tied into why they tried to shrink the land and who was on it, and made the land synonymous with Nuwaupians, because they wanted to create an illusion that Dr. York had purchased his land to seclude these individuals to do these unlawful acts.
Right.
So if you say it's a worldwide organization that people all over the world, all races are coming and visiting this land, and you're building all these structures for others because you don't utilize them. Dr. York is building all these structures for everyone else. And people are coming here daily to visit the land and is staying on the land and enjoying the land, then it destroys the narrative that he bought the land for the purpose of illegal sex, which
Right.
is asinine to say you bought 476 acres and build pyramids on it so you can hide your illicit
Yeah,
acts.
it makes
Makes
no
no sense
sense.
whatsoever.
Of course,
You
that
know,
was so they could tie it into RICO, right?
correct.
But
It ties
even
to
with,
the RICO.
yeah, but even with the RICO, which
Well,
is
it helped with the RICO because
yeah,
the RICO was the umbrella that everything was under. So if you say there's the Mann Act violation, there's racketeering, and this organization was created for this purpose, then you can say the RICO Act. And what they did was, because you have to have a criminal organization. You can't have a criminal organization with one person. So what
this
they
is what
did
I was
was,
just about to say. Yeah, like
right,
it doesn't
there
make
are
sense.
still 200 Jane and John Does on the indictment. There's Dr. York was accused along with 100 John Does and 100 Jane Does with the
Wow.
RICO,
But
but he
then
was
only he's the only one that is
correct. They
in
prosecuted
yeah, prosecuted. That makes no sense either for RICO.
none whatsoever.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's like having such a beautiful land for a completely different purpose, and then to be getting this narrative just so that they can put him away when the real reasons behind it is to stop the progressiveness of not just black people or African Americans, but the entire world. It's who would want to do such a thing, you know?
That's a doctrine class right there. Who want to do that? Like, get into you see what's going on in the world right now. You see who want to do it. You know,
Yeah.
So this came. This came from. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah. I mean, we
we
know.
wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities in high places.
Mhm.
You know, so it's an ongoing war going on, not just here in Georgia or United States, globally.
Yeah.
Um,
I
this
mean,
disagreeableness.
share whatever else you want to share regarding Tamare and the land and your experience there. But obviously, like you said at the beginning, what do we take from where we are? Like, we obviously want Pops home, we want Dr. York home. So, what is it that we can let people know or that we can do? Because really, that's what really matters now. We can talk about the historical things, and obviously, we're dispersed now and trying to rebuild and come together. And we really need Pops home, right? We really need the master teacher home. So, if you can talk a little bit on that as well.
Okay. One thing I would say, like I said, we definitely want our teacher home. Number one, because he's innocent, and what Dr. York used to always speak about um, was us taking this information and it transforming us to do similar works. You follow me?
Mm,
This doctrine information was meant to wake us up and give us an insight of what we could all do. And I see many students, Dr. York, some who acknowledge it, some who don't, who have gone on and are still building. So my thing would be, if Dr. York touched you in any way, take what that is, in whichever way you were touched and inspired by Dr. York, and to continue to build on it, but do it together.
mm,
They so many oftentimes want to split us apart, but it's about doing it together and taking that inspiration that Dr. York gave us, in which form it manifests in, and do it bigger, better, further. Teach the youth it, and us come together and organize, because we can rebuild another Tamare. We can still build hospitals. Like I said, our Mahdi Shrine Temple is in plans to try to build a hospital, not try to build a hospital in Africa. We have many different Nuwaupian Spaniards who have their own businesses. And it's just about taking it and making it bigger, making it better, move through the world and heal those who need healing mentally, because we see all the craziness that's going on right now throughout the
mm.
world. And many of the things that Dr. York prophesies, I don't want to say prophesies because you say he's a prophet. Many of the things that Dr. York wrote about in the scrolls, you see happening today. Like I remember reading Leviathan when I was in high school, and it was always things to come. If you read the book of Leviathan now, you're actually living in it. You're seeing everything that was spoke about in those
Mm,
books actually happening in real time. The man of the hour is happening in real time. All these different things are happening. So Dr. York was preparing us years ago on how we should move now, and it always was tribally, always move together, together,
mm,
together, together. And move in one mind and one body, one mind with a body, multiple parts moving in unison. You follow what I mean? So
yeah.
that would be my message to Nuwaupians and Sabaeans and those who study Dr. York is just take the inspiration that he gave us and continue to utilize it to help our generation and the younger generation and the generations to come. And don't stop. Whatever you think that you want to accomplish, if you're not afraid of it, then you're not thinking big enough.
Mm,
And Dr. York would always teach us to think big. You know what I mean? Don't think small. Like the plans he was enacting, some of them that I gave earlier, and others that I didn't even talk about yet that Dr. York, were planning on doing. They were huge plans, because it's about us recapturing our heritage, recapturing our lives, being controllers of our own destiny, and not letting others who have disagreeable intent control our children, control our destiny, control our future. You follow? And
mm,
we see that going on right now. The world is crazy.
that's
It's a lot
right.
crazier than when I was growing up. And then, like I said, you see so much of what Dr. York taught about. You see in just manifesting daily,
Mm,
daily. Like man from Planet Risk doesn't sound so far fetched right now.
mm,
It's not laughable anymore to those who laughed at it then. People are
yeah.
coming out of the woodwork saying, Doc said something about this before. Doc said something about that. So it's about this, taking whatever you learn and taking it to the next level again and doing it together,
Mm.
together, together, together. That's what Doc always taught.
And the freedom fight
The freedom fight continues. I won't go into the legal aspects of Dr. York's case.
tour,
That's what his legal
obviously
team will
still an
do.
ongoing case, of course. Yeah.
Ongoing
Mm,
case, um, as well as is a global ongoing case, international. Like I said, I won't go into that. I'll
mm,
let others who have more knowledge of it go into it.
yeah.
But I will
I
say
mean,
that
I guess it's more in terms of how people can. I know I always explain and mention about supporting with a free will offering or anything that
correct.
you can do through the acts of kindness. We will
Oh,
post that
definitely,
in the link. Yeah. That
definitely.
sure would help.
The act of kindness is definitely still going, and any donations are always accepted and always needed. You can also support your local bookstores. They always need your support, and
Mm,
love to see you there at question and answer classes, as well as just purchasing anything from the books. Excuse me, anything from the brothers and sisters you see out working,
mm,
propagating. You can also check us out online. Visit the website where you'll get a lot of information.
sure.
You'll get updates on the legal status of Dr. York. Get updates on current information that's coming out, as well as we have many of the scrolls there. So
Mm.
in any way you can support, we would greatly appreciate it.
So sorry, my phone's. But yeah, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about? Yeah, feel free. If you feel that you've covered everything, then I mean, we can always do another part if it's necessary, because like,
Okay,
I mean, Ta Tamare, when did you start building Tamare? Like, was it a 99? What would be the
96,
year? 96, and like
96.
from 96 to 2002, it's a lot of information that you've tried to, summarize. I'm sure there's
Yeah,
much more to cover.
definitely.
You touched on the sisters, but because this is another thing that comes up when people try to paint the narrative that, the women were separate and the men were separate, and like they use this in support of what they tried to paint in terms of it being a secluded, community that people had kind of no freedom of their own to do what they like. But both you and myself, we know that that wasn't the case. But just for the audience, being somebody that, experienced this firsthand, if you want to shed some light on that aspect.
Okay. Well, for one, our separation. mainly dealt with the fact that we weren't allowed to build the way we were properly trying to build. The idea was to have housing for families on Tamare. You get your own plot of land, your own house on Tamare. And we were precluded from doing that. We weren't able to do that. That's why, again, why Tamare was such a small community. You weren't dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people there. You were dealing with, like I said, less than 100 people, many times way less than that at any given time on Tamare, because we couldn't get the specific zoning that we needed. All right. We believe tribally that uh, we should protect our sisters, protect our brothers, and we make no excuse for the way we live, the way we live. All right. We weren't secluded. There were things we did together. There were things we did apart. You follow what I mean? But there was no seclusion. We were out all the time. Like I said, you'd find us, you bumping into us from Tamare everywhere. So there wasn't a seclusion that if you lived on Tamare you would never seen. You were somewhere put away. That's so false.
Yeah.
It's incredibly false. The people who come up there used to see sisters all the time. The sisters helped out working. They worked in pyramids. What happens is a lot of times people were interacting with sisters who may have lived up there. They didn't even realize it because it's not like we went around parading like, "Oh, this is who I am. This is where I live," things like that. Like a lot of people, at first they didn't know I lived on Tamare. They just saw me painting or something like that until they were told. So, it's a false narrative. And again, people use anything to try to sensationalize Tamare. It's a group of people who were passionate about building something for the future. And in that passion, there were certain sacrifices we made, but none of those sacrifices did anything to lessen our integrity, did anything to demean us, did anything to make us less than who we were. So I had a great time with Tamarin. Great time with Tamarin. I mean, I
Same here.
enjoyed those years thoroughly.
Sure.
Tamarin.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I enjoyed every moment on Tamare. But just for those who never visited Tamare and to leave on a positive note, can you share any memories that you recall, any beautiful memories you can remember with like the master being on Tamare or any of like the events that I mean I met so many people on Tamare during Savior's days, so is there any moments that you want to share with the audience of just like the experience with the master teacher on Tamare?
Um, well, I like to share sometimes experiences that were out of the norm.
Right.
I'll share one with you. I think it was around 93. Uh, Brother Yusuf Short, longtime member, had a birthday, and we all went out to eat. I think it was at Golden Corral, one of them all-you-can-eat restaurants. Everybody was there. Again, it was small, so it wasn't like everybody's 100 people, maybe like 20, 25 people. Had a great time. Come back, and his family had set out a big, long table on the basketball court of desserts and food and stuff. We're going to continue the celebration. So we sitting there, Pops was about to cut the cake, get everything prepared. We all happy. And one of the sisters decided to throw a piece of popcorn at Pops. A piece of popcorn. And Pops is sitting there like, you done effed up now. Next thing you know, cake is flying, ice cream is flying, cupcakes. Man, we had the craziest food
Wow.
fight on Tamare on the basketball court. And again, I'm young. I just I didn't know Pop that long, and I'm having a ball, man. And I'm out of all this food flying. I went and grabbed me a thing of ice cream, like, oh, we're gonna need this later on. Like we just had a ball. And I said that story because if you were ever around Pops, really, it was a lot of laughter and joking. Pops was and we had a ball, you know what I mean? And that food fight always set up, it always forefront in my head.
Yeah.
A lot of times we make Dr. York just this spiritual teacher who's walking around on water. And that's the image that people try to portray of him.
Yeah.
Dr. York was a man, most hardworking man I ever met. He has a lot of information, but he was a man who cared about us and we had fun with. We had a ball. You know what I mean? With some rough times, it was a whole lot of good times that outweighed those rough times that those devils tried to give us. You follow? And if people really reflect back on the times when they laughed with Pops, because I remember the laughter, you know, and all
Yeah,
the good times
same.
we had.
Yeah.
That memory, again, that memory is in 93. So the next conversation I have one from 94. And we'll continue. Each year I give another memory or something like
Yeah. Okay. Great, great, great. Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, people just listening to even the recordings from so many years ago that you just hear people laughing all the time, you know.
that.
That's one thing I definitely remember from the master teacher, like his sense of humor is just amazing. Like, you know,
Exactly.
and you're just rolling up laughing, even when it's a serious situation, because he
Correct.
makes you feel comfortable, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. And I have to go, but
Okay.
one,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for inviting me. And I'll definitely any questions. You know, I teach class also in Decatur, so I've been
Right.
teaching for years. So it's no question off limits. I don't care. That's what we do. You know how it is. We ask
Yeah,
the questions.
that's right.
But I want to leave on this note, like you just mentioned about the laughter on Tama're. And it was a class one time up on the hill, you know, near the stage. And I
Yeah.
remember Pops was teaching, and he's like, "Hold up!" He just said, "Everybody be quiet and just listen." And we all were quiet, and all you heard was children running around laughing,
Mm.
and that's what it was all about.
Tour.
Children, the future generations. All right.
And
So again, thank you
ironically,
for the platform, and I look forward to coming back.
thank you for coming through. And yeah, we can do this again anytime because it's about sharing these experiences from people who lived it. You know, they were actually there, and
Yeah.
looking forward to having other people as well to come on the channel. But it was amazing having you on board, and we could be here, as you say, all day. But yeah,
Okay.
well, I appreciate love you until the next time, brother. Take
My
care,
pleasure.
and we'll tape. All right.
Love you.
Wadu. Wadu.